Dr. McGrath, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Your full name?
Mary Helena McGrath.
Okay. Your parents' names?
My mother's name was Mary Margaret, and my father's name was Vincent.
Okay. Any medical relation there at all, where they have to do anything?
No, not at all. My father was an attorney, and he was a career military officer. So he was a legal officer in the United States Navy, and I grew up in the armed forces.
Were you, so you were a service brat?
Yes.
So you so I was going to say, where were you born? Where, and you lived in many different places, can I assume that?
Yes, we
Your
did.
birthplace was where?
I was born in New York.
Okay.
It was at the end of the war, and my father was deployed in the South Pacific in the Marianas. And my mother had gone home to her family, and so I didn't see him until I was 18 months old. That's when he mustered out of and came home. And then we did. I went to 3 high schools. So it was a very, very, it was a wonderful life. I love the military. I was very happy as a military child.
I found that about military people. They like that, but they're young, and so everything's an adventure, and you're the new person at school. And,
yes.
You know, so everybody's checking you out and all that.
Exactly.
Okay.
But also, it's not lonely because, you know, they embrace you because they expect you to be moving. But then when you move to a new place, you'll run into some old people. So it's, you know, particularly if you go to San Diego and you're in the Navy, all your friends are there. So
yes.
It's very exciting.
Yeah, good. Now, you have children?
I do.
Okay, grandchildren?
Yes.
Well, give us some names.
Okay, my daughter Maggie is a physician. She's a primary care physician in practice, and she's married and has 2 little girls, Sophie and Lucy. And my son.
She's where?
She's in a city called Salinas, which is about 100 miles south of San Francisco, where I am, and that's where John Steinbeck was born.
Ah,
yeah.
Grapes
so
of
that's
Wrath.
Grapes of Wrath country, and she practices, and it's a perfect setting for a primary care doctor. It's she's very happy in that practice. My son is completely different. He's an attorney in Los Angeles with a big firm.
You were one of the early females in plastic surgery. So if you tell us about plastic surgery, your experience as a female in plastic surgery at that time, anything different, or how you were accepted, and about your mentors.
Absolutely. I had done general surgery for 6 years. I did 5 years of training, and then they had what they called, it was an honorary thing to be a super chief at the University of Colorado in surgery, which meant you got paid poorly for an additional year while you worked very hard. So I and another person accepted that honor, Bob Beert, and we did that in our 6th year. And they were wonderful years. At the time that I was at the University of Colorado, our chairman was Dr. Tom Starzl, and he was out there before he went to Pittsburgh, and those were the early days of transplant. It was very exciting. I was there in the time when he was actually doing some baboon transplants, and remember seeing those animals going to the OR, which is extraordinary. It was an extraordinary time. But our true mentor was a surgeon named Dr. Ben Eisman. And Dr. Eisman was a gifted teacher, a charismatic figure, great friends with Earl Peacock, another great colorful figure in plastic surgery at that time.
We could spend an hour talking about Earl
We could spend an
Peacock.
hour on Earl Peacock alone. And Dr. Eisman was like that, and we remained lifelong friends. He did so many things with us. He would take us, the residents, we would, when you were getting off call, we'd pull out about 4:30, 5 in the morning, and we'd go mountain climbing. And he would take us with light equipment, and we'd climb one of the peaks in Colorado and be back in the afternoon. But he, at every M&M conference, he always had a poet laureate, and you were appointed, and you had to find just the right quote.
Ah.
And you always had tests like that. So it was a very exciting time. I loved surgery. I loved it there. I was the second woman to train in Colorado, and I was the only one in the program at that time. The other one had finished, and she's still a friend. I really was. It was very comfortable years, and the gender thing didn't come up much,
Good.
which is kind of extraordinary. I don't really think I never thought about it much during all those years. So it kind of set the stage that it wasn't very in the front of my mind by the time I got interested in plastic surgery. And I have the story of how I got interested in plastic surgery. I was a third-year resident or fourth-year resident out there, and the American Burn Association met in Denver, and so one of the general surgeons said, "There's a speaker at this meeting. You have to go here. It's a fellow named Dr. Tom Krissick." So we went, and he gave the Phoenix Talk, which is one of his great lectures, has been published. It was published in Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery, and I was bowled over. I was captivated. I'd never heard such a talk. And then they kindly invited me to have dinner with them that night, and I sat next to him, and he said, "Have you ever thought about plastic surgery?"
Yeah, I could see him saying it that way.
Just like that. And I said, "No, I have not. I'm going to be a vascular surgeon." And he said, "Well, you ought to think about plastic surgery. Why don't you come up to New Haven and visit us?" And that's how it all evolved.
Interesting. He's one of the most brilliant, articulate plastic surgeons. I mean, when he wrote an article, it was a book. I mean, when he wrote, a comment on something, he was just an extraordinary human being.
He sparkled. I mean, to just be with him in those years. Then I spent 2 years with him at Yale training. Stayed on, and he moved to New York after that and invited me to join him, and I did. I moved down to New York, so I had another year with him before he set off for other places.
Yeah.
But those were wonderful years. He was unpredictable, very charismatic. He would always think of things that you just hadn't occurred to you. And it kept opening your eyes up all the time. He was a very
he thought
exciting
outside
person.
the box a lot.
Thought outside the box.
Yes.
Yeah.
You mentioned Dr. Eisman. Anybody else that you want to mention, or any? And then
The
we'll
only
move on
other
then.
people I would that were so important in those years, one of them was Dr. Stephen Arian. He had just finished training, and he had just gone on the faculty at Yale. And wow, what a supportive, wonderful person he was. So generous in teaching you how to operate, but also generous teaching you how to write things and do things. And he never claimed the glory. He's been like that through all the years. He's just truly one of the most, a true teacher in a very steady way. And he was terrific. And then there was Kirk Watson. He was the hand surgeon that we did hand surgery with. And at that time, we did shorthand fellowships.
Well, how long was the fellowship?
We did 4 months.
Ah, okay.
So we went up to join him he was in Hartford and did that. And I loved hand. I really those very exciting days. I liked hand.
Yeah.
And then after I finished training, we opened the first microsurgery center in Connecticut. And
what year was that?
That would have been about 79.
Okay, very
79,
very early
80.
on.
Very early. And we did the first finger transplants in Connecticut. And of course, we were in the newspaper.
Yes.
And, on television, and all those things happened. They were very exciting. No one had ever seen such things. And of course, it was exhausting because we weren't set up for it. And everything would pour into this microsurgery center. And, there were just 2 of us who could do it. And
we were learning our way.
We were learning, yeah.
Yeah, we were figuring out the algorithm, how we were going to do things, because they just, like you said, the suture was just, everything was antique at that point.
That's right.
The instruments weren't developed, and everything came after that. So that goes. The segue was that you've seen paradigm shifts in plastic surgery during your career. That's one of them. Any other things you'd like to mention in the field of plastic surgery?
Not just the technical things. I think the thing that has been so thrilling to watch over the years is that plastic surgery has, we always talk about things becoming fragmented, but that's a negative way of looking at the fact that we have widened our breadth and we have not lost breadth, which is pretty amazing. As everybody becomes more specialized, they become siloed and go into different areas, but somehow, and I give a lot of credit to the people who've served on the boards and the RCs, they have required the programs to keep the breadth. And so we still have this wonderful training where we do craniomaxillofacial and we do hand and we we do general and we do breast and we do all the different things and we do aesthetic, which is critical, and we've held it together. And I think that's been when I trained, you could be in a program that was focused in one area. And you recall, you could go to a program and maybe see a lot of something and that was it.
Right.
But now we have this wonderful requirements driven, but wonderful breadth that's offered to everybody. So it's, I think that's one of the exciting things about our specialty.
You're the first woman on the American Board of Plastic Surgery, correct?
I
the
was,
first examiner.
yeah.
And when do you still do the examinations? Do you still?
I do.
What is, just tell me a little bit when you do that, what that's like. I've never asked a board examiner since you're the first female. I just thought of that because I remember sitting for my boards, but they're totally different now.
Yes, yes.
And they're almost about as anonymous as you could be.
Yes.
Is so that nobody knows anything about you. But what do you find about the students coming through, that they have the breadth that you want? And
they're so smart. They're so smart. And sometimes you'll be asking questions and people will answer them and you'll hear things you didn't know. I mean, you're learning as you're asking the questions. They're so they're so well trained. But the thing that's the hardest to do is to keep a poker face, because you can't show affirmation when they give the right answer, because then you'd be leading. And so you have to try to look not stern, but impassive. And if you're used to talking to people as we are, where you're nodding at me and I'm looking at you and we're interchanging,
that's what I said.
Can't do that.
You have to have blinders.
Exactly.
Interesting, because I guess because our specialty has really, and it was a Dr. Whitaker, one of the gentlemen that I was talking to earlier in the interview process this week, was about how plastic surgery was just a step-sister or brother of general.
Absolutely.
Now it's so difficult to get a residency, and now we have combined. It said you basically have to pick them out of medical school. It was Joe McCarthy, I think, said we have to identify them in their senior year of medical school, which is a big commitment. You have to decide before you're finished medical school. He said in the old days you were third-year general surgeon. Said I want to be a plastic surgeon now.
But we also are getting the very best out of medical school. We're getting the
You're getting a skew of those.
Top graduates. So it goes to show, I think, how our specialty has thrived over the years that I've watched it. Now we've had little glitches,
yes,
but we correct. I mean, each time when we make some sort of mistake, we seem to figure it out, and I think it's just because of the. We have people who are very creative and innovative, sometimes annoying, but we could think of characters but it's good because it is not stodgy.
Hey, we are ego-driven as plastic surgeons.
Yeah. But it gives a tremendous thrust to people thinking creatively and thinking of. And there are many people who think of the greater good, so there's a lot of unselfish people too.
Now you're on the device committee with the FDA, correct?
Oh yes.
So, and you of course lived through the silicone implant crisis.
Yes.
And what is it like to be on that committee, and just how you deal with that? And I assume they're devices for plastic surgery, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. What is that like?
Well, it's actually a combined panel. It's called General and Plastic Surgery Devices. Okay. And the story of how I got on is quite interesting. I've actually done this since 1982.
Wow.
Which is hard to believe. So what had happened is the then presidents of ASPRS, back in those days, still had the R in it, knew they wanted to get someone on this panel. And the FDA was interested in diversity. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was only one woman around rattling around at that point that they could put their finger on and
There was only one woman rattling around that was willing to do that.
Willing to do that. So I did, and over the years, I've chaired the panel twice. You can't succeed yourself on the panel. So what the FDA does is they make me a consultant for a couple of years, and then they bring me back. So I've come back a number of times. I got a special thing from them after the 25th year I've been doing this.
Wow.
But it's been a long time.
So you
and
flew out to Washington, period? Oh, okay.
And
That's
did one
fun.
last year, so there's all different topics. Last year we had a panel hearing on injectables for rejuvenation of the dorsum of the hand. And it was it's still very exciting to be involved with that.
Yeah, because you're in the front lines.
You're on the front line.
And you know what bad things can happen.
But they listen to me now.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been around so long that I've been through, all kinds of changes at the FDA. So I know most of them when they were young, and so they've become colleagues too.
Now you're the mentor. What do you feel is your greatest professional accomplishment?
I think the thing that, as the years passed, I had the opportunity to represent plastic surgery outside of our own walls. And as I look back on those years, particularly at the American College of Surgeons, where I was the regent for plastic surgery for 9 years and then an officer and all those things, so I was with them intensively for about 12 years. I really regarded it throughout that time as my job to make sure that plastic surgery was well represented and played a role on the national stage in any decisions that touch surgery, and that we were never forgotten as decisions were made, because sometimes by that time we had moved into more surgery centers outside hospitals, and there were chances that we could be kind of marginalized. But to try to bring it back and make sure that these things now are central. I mean, now everything's becoming outpatient surgery.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
right.
I mean, with laparoscopic surgery, you go home the same day
crazy.
after your cholecystectomy. So they've come to where we were earlier. But
Yes.
a lot of those things as they evolved were changes that I wanted to make sure that we were, people recognized that we were on the cutting edge, that we weren't pulling away.
Yes.
And so that is what I think I regard as one of the important things. And the other has just been teaching. It's been a blessing to be with the young people,
Yes.
and to this day.
Yes.
And it really keeps you on your toes. And,
Yes. I think it's important
gotta
to be
keep
active.
reading and-
What do you feel is your greatest professional disappointment?
You know, I don't think I've had many disappointments. Professionally, I don't think I've had
Good.
any.
Well, you're not the first person to say that. I just like to include
I've been so
both sides.
blessed. Yeah, I can't look back and say, oh wow, I wish, there's a lot of things if I had it to do over, I might try to do better, but there's nothing that was ever a cataclysmic big disappointment.
And your greatest joy, what has that been?
That's family.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the end it really is. But there's also, I feel like I have an extended family, and you come and you see the plastic surgeons that you were at the Chief Residence Council with, and some of them, the bond is there, and it's extraordinary.
Mm-hmm. It's a unique, close-knit society.
It is, and it's very supportive, and it's a joy. It's part of the joy. So your family, yes, because they're with you, and the people you work with every day. Your family at at the medical center and in our group and our division, our family and our residents who also remember you as somebody very important in their lives.
Yes.
So you know that. But then the friends that we make through the years. Okay.
And I think you touched on this. If who do you admire most, either professional or personal? You mentioned Dr. Eisman and Dr. Krizik, but is there anybody else that you think of personally or whatever?
The most important figures, I think, formatively, as I've thought about it, really were amazingly my parents and my grandparents. Yeah, they they lived through extraordinary times, and they were very upbeat people, and they really worked very hard, and they instilled that in us. But the thing, particularly my maternal grandfather, who I was particularly fond of, and I think we were fond, I was the oldest granddaughter, and I really learned a lot from him. He was a very active man and taught me things all the time, like how to paint and hammer and that kind of thing. I mean, not other things.
You always need to know that.
Those kind of things. I mean, I know a lot of that kind of stuff thanks to my granddad. But I think that he just set the stage. He never saw me as a little girl. You know, I was just there, and he took me along for whatever he was up to, and had a very forward-looking, relaxed way about him, but a huge moral sense and great character. And that's probably the thing that I've admired a great deal over the years, and I've gotten to know some of the great figures, luckily, in American bioethics. And I have found some of that work the most fascinating that I've done, mainly with the American College of Surgeons. We wrote a book in 2007, Ethics for the Clinical Surgeon, and I became acquainted and friends with Dr. Edmund Pellegrino at the Kennedy Center for Ethics, and spending time with him and Mark Siegler, who's a bioethicist at the University of Chicago, runs the McLean Center. Those people have been probably very important to me, and I've really relished knowing them. That's been part of the blessing of this career, to have the chance to be with people like that.
Good. That goes right into my next question. Your words of wisdom for present and future generations of plastic surgeons.
I think that we have to recognize that our diversity and the way that we can separate into surgeons that focus on different parts of our specialty is essential to our greater good, and to avoid the trap of alienating each other. I think we've tended to do that sometimes. I think we pull back from it. We figure out that we shouldn't do that, and we pull back. But as the years go by, if we can maintain the collegiality and the interchange, it so freshens us when we have hand surgeons and aesthetic surgeons and maxillofacial surgeons sitting together, because as you hear the research and the work that one's doing, you get an idea. And you can take that back then to what you're doing in hand surgery, or you hear about the research there and carry it back. And it gives us a chance to keep our specialty incredibly fresh and innovative with new ideas, so to prepare us for the future. So I guess my advice, if I get to give advice, is to try to maintain the communication lines and not lose that, and not isolate each other from one, into
the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
The whole is greater than all those parts, and it'd be really critical to keep that.
Okay. You're not retired, so what you have plans for retirement?
I do.
Okay, just a hint of what.
I have a very nice citrus ranch in Southern California that right now is not doing very well because of the drought. We haven't been able to water the poor trees very much, so they're not bearing much fruit. But that's going to be my next life, to move down there. It's a community called Ojai.
Ojai.
Ojai, not too far from Santa Barbara. One of the things that I want to do in retirement is, over the years, I've gone to a hospital in Haiti, and I want to continue to do that, even not as a surgeon, just to help them.
Your predictions, if you will, about the next quarter century in plastic surgery.
Well, plastic surgery is going to face a lot of the same problems that all of surgery is. There's so many new things bearing down on us. The things right now that on the front burner really are surgical volume and the feeling that if we don't do a certain number of procedures, we won't be credited by our institutions or by Medicare or by the payers to do them. So we'll have to, hit critical targets for numbers of cases of certain kinds, or we won't be able to do them. Those kind of pressures are enormous. They're driven, I think, by regulation and by interest in making medical care affordable. And I hope that plastic surgery joins with all of surgery, and I think this is a place where we can't deal with this as a specialty only, but need to cooperate with other surgeons, maybe through the American College of Surgeons or the AMA, however we choose to do it, but organizationally to try to let our voice be heard, because the profession is changing, and I think there's a tremendous danger that we'll stop being a profession and we'll become employees. We'll be employees, increasingly young plastic surgeons now are going to work in an employment situation. They're not what people did 20 years ago, and that's going to continue. It's inevitable. We can't help it. But also we want to make sure that we have a voice and some way, something to fall back on, a greater group to try to maintain the qualities of independence and authority that physicians had and the surgeons have had.
Are there any other questions or particular things you'd like to highlight today? You think we've covered them pretty good?
I think it's, just to close by saying it's been a blessing to be in our specialty and to have lived through these years. And what's really exciting is I don't look back with a lot of nostalgia, because right now is so exciting.
I know.
I mean, it's not that we once had a great day and it's gone. We had a great day, and there were these leaders and these wonderful, the Yashara Kawitzes and the Tom Krisicks and the, the Nick Georgiades and these, these people that were just iconic for us. Yes. But there's ones now that are doing the same thing, and I think it's, you look at some of the young people coming into this, the American Association, the new people, they're going to carry this on, and it's been amazing to be able to be here for it and to be able to participate in it.
So we've lived through some interesting periods. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.